Hello, my name's Andy Seaman, the Senior Instructor of Combat Fusion Martial Arts. Well, thank you for joining us again on one of our videos on the techniques of the Orange Belt syllabus, and in this one we're going to be looking at the technique 5 swords. Now 5 swords is a very popular technique with a lot of Kenpoists. Many instructors have their own views and ideas on this technique, and we will be looking at some of those as we go through the video itself. One of the things we will be paying attention to is timing. Timing is very essential with this technique. Also, we'll be looking at why the technique seems to be so popular with so many Kenpoists. We'll also be discussing a short drill exercise we can do with 5 swords, and of course at the end we'll progress on to a few simple variations. So, let's get into 5 swords and look at it from the 3 perspectives without a partner.
This technique receives its name from its old method of execution, originally executed with hand swords only in a count of 5. From the inward block, we have the first sword, followed by the tip of the sword, and again another tip of the sword, the 4th sword, and finally the 5th sword, hence the name 5 swords. However, as an interesting point, if the extension is included, there could be a case for calling this technique 6 swords. In the base model, our opponent steps in with his lead leg. We match this step by also stepping forward and planting our lead leg so the knee checks our opponent's knee. Simultaneous with our step forward, we deliver an inward block with our lead arm to our opponent's attacking arm, impacting on the inside of his arm between the wrist and elbow. In the initial version we teach at Combat Fusion Martial Arts, the lesson is to experience a requirement to step forward only. In this case, you are unable to retreat. If we remove my partner Mark from view, we see my rear hand is acting as a high positional check. In this position, the rear hand is already lined up with the next target. But as the hand sword tracks along our opponent's arm, the rear hand can be utilised as a check if required. Another version seen quite often in Kenpo is a two-handed blocking method. This is where the lead arm blocks on the inside of our opponent's arm above the elbow, whilst the rear arm checks the lower forearm. Although the method of execution of the follow-up strikes are similar to the one-armed blocking version, the strike from the rear arm lacks backup mass due to its angle of attack. There is also a potential of an involuntary counter-strike resulting from a reorbit. Using the two-handed version is obviously an option in 5 swords, and we do teach this in Combat Fusion, but at a later date. However, this method of execution is actually contained in the technique Defying the Storm. Some Kenpoists also use a similar methodology, but alter the lead hand block to a hand sword directly to the neck, or a vertical punch to the shoulder, or to the solar plexus. Again, these are all options that can be explored in 5 swords, but this method of execution is contained in the technique Calming the Storm. Following the step forward inward block, immediately deliver an outward hand sword to the side of our opponent's neck. This aids in cancellation of his height, width and depth zones. The outward hand sword is then immediately followed by a vertical heel palm to our opponent's face as we pivot into a forward bow. In our video covering the technique Lone Kimono, we explored the concept of half-beat timing. Likewise, in 5 swords we can execute the outward hand sword simultaneously with the vertical heel palm. These weapons, travelling together towards their target, impact on the quarter beat. After the vertical heel palm, pivot back into a neutral bow, delivering an uppercut to our opponent's stomach, as our rear hand returns to our lead bicep palm up. As our opponent's reaction to the uppercut could be violent, we must be aware of another involuntary strike. However, like any good lumberjack, we too try not to chop trees down upon ourselves. So, to that end, we step up on the rear circle with our rear foot into another forward bow. Simultaneously with the step, our rear hand delivers an outward hand sword to our opponent's neck. As our lead hand is utilised as a travelling check to our opponent's arm on its way to deliver a downward hammering hand sword to the rear of our opponent's neck, as we simultaneously pivot into a neutral bow employing marriage of gravity. Before we progress on to the extension, let's explore the timing of the last set of moves and strikes. The step, uppercut and returning heel palm should all move with simultaneous timing. When these moves are timed correctly and performed at speed, they allow us to move up from quarter beat timing to eighth beat timing. However, a common situation one can find themselves in is having an opponent whose reaction differs from the ideal. Obviously, in this example, the simple answer is to immediately switch to the opposite side and still finish out with 5 swords. This also illustrates the importance of us learning our techniques both on the left and right side. We can preempt this by converting the ideal direct uppercut into one that is angled or curving inward. This will encourage our opponent to turn in a preferred direction during his reaction to the uppercut. We will now proceed on to the extension to 5 swords. If you do not require this information at your stage of training, you may wish to bypass the next section. Following the delivery of the hand sword to the rear of our opponent's neck, pivot into a forward bow as your rear hand delivers an underhand heel palm strike to our opponent's jaw hinge, turning his head to face away as your lead hand positions to your rear armed bicep palm up. Now convert the underhand heel palm to a claw to your opponent's face and immediately claw his face back to face you, as you deliver an outward hand sword to the bridge of his nose. If your opponent doesn't react fully, another option is to deliver a heel palm to his chin, thereby lifting his head and exposing his neck to your lead arm, which rebounds off your body to deliver an outward hand sword to the throat. From the final hand sword, pivot slightly away from your opponent and deliver a lead leg back kick to his center mass or other available target. From here, front crossover and cover out. If you asked a Kenpoist to list their 5 favourite Kenpo techniques, you could pretty much well be assured that 5 swords would be in that list somewhere. But why is this? By taking a look at the items a novice is taught in their early years of Kenpo training, such as block set 1 with its common point of interaction of the inward block, or short form 1 with its blocking on the move, long form 1 with its moving and blocking and counter strike, or short form 2 advancing with a block and counter strike, and long form 2 with its virtual complete application of 5 swords. Delayed sword, alternating maces, sword of destruction, attacking mace, and mace of aggression. We see that all of these components involved in the formal years of Kenpo training all lay the groundwork for 5 swords. So why do we all have a soft spot for this technique? Could it be that 5 swords is made up of what we practiced the most? We're now going to take a look at a drill which is based around 5 swords. In this drill, my partner Mark continually obstructs or counters my attempt to execute 5 swords. Whilst my partner is trying to obstruct my progress, I am trying to stay with the base model of this technique. To begin with, Mark throws a standard attack and I respond with the ideal defense and counter strike. Mark blocks my lead arm with his rear arm. I now apply lesson 1 from strike set 1 and again attempt to throw an outward hand sword. Mark again blocks my hand sword, this time with his lead arm. I now apply B1A, but you will note B1A is prefixed by the letter H in brackets. This is to indicate an alteration to the base move by the changing of a vertical punch to the heel palm. Mark now attempts a counter strike by delivering an uppercut with his rear arm. My response is to insert a section of the technique glancing wing. Mark again throws another uppercut. I finish out the sequence by applying the 5-sword ending, but this time to the front of his body.
Hello and welcome back. So now we're going to take a look at those variations I talked about earlier on in the video. These are simple variations, nothing too complex, and this first one involves our partner throwing a prefix punch before he steps through with the standard 5 swords attack. Our response in this is to defend against the prefixed attack before flowing into 5 swords, which in this case we're only going to demonstrate as far as the uppercut. Okay, so now let's take a look at our second variation. In this one, all we've done is swap the 2 attacks around. Our opponent starts off with a standard 5 swords attack, which we step forward and defend as per the base model. But as we go to strike his neck with a hand sword, we note that he's starting to initiate a punch with his free hand. So we alter the target for the hand sword and its intent, so it goes from being a strike to being a block, as we then heel palm the face and continue through to the uppercut, again only as far as that point. So let's get on to our third and final variation. In this one, I'm altering the uppercut from a low attack to a high attack. The uppercut becomes more of a vertical fist which hammers down onto my opponent's chest. In this strike, I'm employing what I term selective marriage of gravity. Now we all understand marriage of gravity as a concept, it's one of our power principles. But here, rather than using my entire body weight, I select just to use the weight of my arm. Basically, I'm turning my arm into a 14-pound baseball bat. So if you try this strike in your training, make sure the hand is relaxed when it hits your opponent and allow the force to strike deeper into the body rather than think of it as blunt force trauma just causing injury. Well, that's the end of our video, and thank you again for joining us here at Combat Fusion Martial Arts. If you haven't done so yet, please think of subscribing to our channel. You can do that by pressing this button down here. Also, if you're looking for ideas on how to train to balance your left and right side so your ambidexterity starts to come through, take a look at this video up here. Well, all I can do now is ask you not to forget to share the video and hit that notification bell so you'll be told when we put new videos up. So again, this is Andy Seeletton saying goodbye.